Prepare the beef for action.
Stuff here. Stuff here. Really good. We're going to carry. Have some smiles. How do you know what that is?
How's everybody this morning? Everybody's awake, excited to be here. You gotta breathe. Don't usually get those. All the kids are glaring at me because we're not supposed to talk about the weather. They think it's bad luck. Where's everybody from?
Arkansas. Texas.
Turn here! Fall to around the peak with ambulance
A lot of
for
old
space.
Southwest.
Park!
I heard one Pennsylvania. Well, I'll give out the safety warning right now. If you are not from the deep south, you see any of these little dirt mounds, do not step in those or kick those over. I learned that 5 years ago when I moved from Ohio. With fire ants, they tear you up. I still got scars on my legs 5 years later, so watch out for those. Maybe watch the kids if they're out in the park. Where you're at would have been no man's land during the siege 150 years ago right now. None of these trees were here. Those are all planted by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s. That was their way of fighting erosion. When you're going through the park, you see we've removed some of them recently to try to return the battlefield to the way that it would have looked at the time of the siege. You can see the line of monuments on the side of the parking lot. That was the Union siege line. About 3/4 of a mile in that direction is the second Texas unit. That's the nearest Confederate fortification. So as we said, you're stuck right in the middle. You would not want to be standing where you're at right now 151 years ago today. Now, Vicksburg, more than just about any other Civil War park, with the exception of maybe Petersburg, is what we call a cannon park, meaning artillery played a huge role here, much more than it would at an open battle like at Gettysburg and Antietam. 47 days and nights, you have artillery fire going on, mainly Union artillery firing on the Confederate defenses protecting Vicksburg. Some of the cannons like this one behind me, this is a 12-pound Napoleon. This is light artillery. Light artillery meaning it weighs about 1 ton. It can be moved around the battlefield by a team of 6 to 8 horses worth of men. Compare that with some of the heavy artillery you see in our artillery park behind you. Some of those guns are in excess of 10,000 pounds. Just the tube alone. Do your second tour stop at the Shirley House. The road that goes in front of there, the current tour road, that was the Jackson Road at the time of the Civil War, so that's a period road. There was a Union artillery position there with some of those heavy siege guns. It took 20 yoke of oxen to move each one of those guns into place, so you're talking 40 oxen. So you can imagine the work that had to go into moving cannon like that up and down ravines and terrain you see around you here. Now this light artillery, Napoleon here, is the most common gun used during the Civil War. The most common gun here at Vicksburg would be the one on the far right, which is a 3-inch ordnance rifle. It's a rifled gun. Napoleon's a smoothbore. They like the smoothbore because of the versatility of the ammunition, which we'll get to in a moment. Those rifled guns, it's just like the difference between throwing a football or throwing a basketball. If I wanted you to throw something and hit that tree, are you going to pick a basketball or a football? Why are you picking the football? It's got that spin, that nice tight spiral. Same thing between a rifled artillery piece and a smoothbore. Smoothbore is accurate. That'll fire a salad shot just about a mile. The rifled gun can go about a time and a half again as far as that. And a lot more accurate. If you're firing at a barn from a mile away, you can hit it with that smoothbore. That barn's got a window and you got a good enough artillery crew, you can hit that window with a 3-inch ordnance rifle. That's the difference. Grant really likes the 3-inch ordnance rifle here because of that accuracy. And what they're doing is trying to knock out these artillery replacements that Confederates have. Also trying to put holes in these fortifications. During the assault on May the 22nd, they actually fire enough rounds at the railroad redoubt where all you Texans, that's where your Texas monument's at, in the South Loop. They actually breach a hole in that fortification because they're firing so many rounds at the wall there. If you're on the defensive though, you really like this gun, but it can be used offensively. A smaller version of this is right inside the front door of the visitor center. How many of you saw that Browns tube right inside the door there? That's one of the 2 guns that we've identified that was actually here. Once you start the tour road, you go through the arch, one of the first monuments you're going to see is going to be that of the Chicago Mercantile Battery. There are a bunch of civic organizations in Chicago, the Mercantile Association, the Corn Exchange, the Board of Trade. They all sponsored artillery batteries at the start of the Civil War. We have the Mercantile Battery here. They pushed 2 guns, which is a little bit lighter than this one, by hand through this ravine behind us during the assault on May 22nd. Pushed them to within 10 yards of the 2nd Texas Lunat, under fire the entire way. You know, Texans, especially in the 1860s, knew how to shoot really well being on the frontier. Well, they still made it within 10 yards away to start firing what they call canister, a large shotgun round. I'll show you in a minute, from 10 yards out. The survivors of those 2 guns, one of them breaks down in the ravine, the other one that gets up there, the survivors from that detachment are all awarded the Medal of Honor. So artillery plays just a huge, crucial role here during the siege. The ammunition I spoke of, you can see just the differences here. This is what comes out of a 3-inch ordnance rifle. So this is just a solid bolt shaped like a bullet, really. You can see how this would be gripped in the barrel and spin just like a football. This is the solid shot of Napoleon. It's just a 12-pound ball. It's used to put holes in things, whether that's a fortification like this, standing rank of men, has a really tight spin on it, and they'd like to depress the barrel so that you could get what they call ricochet fire. This will just bounce along the ground. Oftentimes it'll look like it's not going that fast, and it won't be going fast through the air. There's actually a documented case at the Battle of Gettysburg right before Pickett started, Confederate troops waiting to go across the field. One of those soldiers that's laying there under cover, trying to stay in cover at least, he sees one of these bouncing towards him. It looks like it's going really slow. He decides that he wants to stop it, so he sticks his foot out. It's just going slowly, but there's so much spin on this, it takes his foot off. So, tremendous amount of force there. Take that a step further, we've got 2 exploding rounds that come out of this gun. This is shell. It's the same thing as that 12-pound solid shot, it's just hollowed out. The inside's filled with black powder, it's got a spot for a fuse. So you cut that fuse to the length you wanted it to go, the distance you wanted it to go. The idea with this is to have it explode in the air about 10 yards over your head. All this is going to rain down upon you. The Union artillerymen found also that it worked really good at putting holes in fortifications. That solid shot puts a hole the diameter of it into that wall, so just a really small hole. You cut the fuse a little longer on this, so that when fired, this will be buried in the wall. It'll blow up on the inside of the wall, creating a much bigger hole. Union artillery pounding Vicksburg day and night realizes that artillery is keeping the Confederates away, but also after dark, when they're somewhat under cover, they also have to go out and repair their trench walls every night. So there's not a big hole that the Union Army can just march right into Vicksburg. And this does a double duty for that. Taking shell a step further, we've got this. This is case shot, spherical case. It's the same thing as shell. It's got the powder inside, but it's also got the added punch of 72 musket balls. That's essentially the amount of active duty company, infantry company, and all their muskets about a year or 2 into the war. So this packs a tremendous punch. Just like shell, you want this to explode about 10 yards overhead. All this rains down upon you. This round's actually devised by a British artillery officer. Does anybody know his name? Yep, Henry Shrapnel. That's where the term comes from. During the two assaults on May the 19th and May the 22nd, Confederate soldiers found that these made excellent hill grenades. They just simply light the fuse and throw them over the side. The Union troops were getting trapped in the pit from the outside of the fortification. You have kind of this comedy of errors that wasn't so brutally real, where both sides are raising their muskets over the top, trying not to expose themselves, shooting at each other. The Confederates got to clear the Union troops away, so they start throwing these over. The thing with the 12-pounders, Union soldiers can just as easily throw them right back. So you have kind of this dangerous game of hot potato going on. That stops when one of the Confederate soldiers starts throwing over 32-pound case shot. Those don't get thrown back as easily. Now the defensive round I mentioned, this is the one the Chicago Mercantile Battery actually used offensively, which is the only time I've ever read of that being done. It's canister. This is the defensive round for the gun. This is accurate about 300 to 400 yards out. If you know anything about small arms during the Civil War rifles, that's well within the range of a Civil War rifle. That means this artillery crew is in danger. You notice none of them have swords, pistols, rifles, any of that. Their job is to work that gun. It's actually in the pre-war manual forbidding artillerymen to have sidearms, because your natural reaction for survival is going to be grab that pistol as the enemy's closing quick. You got a pistol with 6 shots. This canister round, this tin can has 27-inch-and-a-half cast iron balls. This is going to do a lot more damage. Not only these balls come flying out, this tin can is going to shred apart when it fires. You can imagine the result on the other end. It's not very pretty. They sometimes double these. You have double canister. There's even cases with triple canister, just loading 3 of these tin cans with powder charge. All that going outward. So this is the last ditch round. If you're infantry coming in, you don't want to run into this. If you're artillery, you don't want to be using this, because that means there's a good chance you're about to be overrun. What I'm going to do is have the detachment here go through a load. I'm going to describe what they're doing while they do it. If I could have you step outside the fence there. And I will warn you when to cover your ears. We don't want any surprises with anybody. Gunner, that's firing.
Gunner to the post! Solid shot! Go!
This gun detachment, everybody except the gunner does not have a name, they have a number. We have number 1 up front with the straw hat. He's swabbing out the barrel. He's also got a ramming shock on the other end to ram the round down the barrel. Number 5 has just brought the projectile up to number 2, who places it in the barrel. In the meantime, number 3 has been patient at the rear. He's got the most important thumb in the Army. What he's doing is keeping his thumb over the vent to create a vacuum. That way you don't have air fanning the flames of any embers, of any rounds that have already been fired. The last thing you want are embers in there when you're putting a whole nother powder
gun
bag
in the
in.
battery. Right hands to the front. March.
We've just got number 6 today. Usually you'll have 6 and 7 back by the limber chest. One's job is just to open and close that lid. That's got a lot of ammunition in it. You don't want anything to hit that to make it go off. That'll take out your whole battery. The other one's job is to cut the fuses on shell and spherical case to the right distance for the gunner. What the gunner's doing now is sighting the gun. You can either tap it left or right so that number 3 can move it either way. You've got an elevating screw down there that you can turn to raise it or lower it. He's also got another piece there. This is a pendulum hoist. This is new technology for the Civil War. The most recent conflict before the Civil War, the Mexican-American War, if you see any drawings or paintings of artillery deployed, usually they're going to be on a roadbed. The reason why the sights they had, you had to be on a flat surface. So you're either on a roadbed or you're making your artillerymen very upset that they got to dig out a flat spot. So with this, it swings like the pendulum on a grandfather clock. You can be on slightly uneven ground and you can still get a good sight in.
Ready!
At the time, they're inserting a friction primer. This is a blown up version. You have black powder in the tube. You have a chemical at the top, like on a match, so that when you pull the lanyard, that's what sets the gun off. They're going to fire in a moment. While they fire, I want you to think about a couple things. What is that explosion going to mean? No, not yet. Think about what this explosion is going to mean. You're a Union soldier. You spent 47 days trying to get into Vicksburg. You put down your rifle, digging constantly, dodging Confederate sniper fire. What's that round going to mean to you? One more round going into Vicksburg. The opposite end, you're a Confederate soldier. 47 days and probably very sleepless nights. You've been pounded consistently by the same artillery. What's that going to mean to you? You're a Confederate civilian in town. You may have had to give up your home because of the bombardment and live in a cave. What's that going to mean to you? Finally, what if you're a slave on one of these local plantations? You know the Union Army brings freedom. Every artillery shell fired into Vicksburg means one step closer to Vicksburg being captured and meaning you're free. What is that going to mean to you? At this time, go ahead and cover your ears.
Fire!
That's just 1 pound of black powder. An actual service charge would have been 2 to 2.5 pounds.
Radical gun out of battle. My hands to the
Multiply
rear.
that by about 500 or 600, and that's the noise of all the guns you have going off here. The Confederates had 172 cannons. The Union Army had over 220.
Ceasefire, secure the
That's
peace.
not even counting what the U.S. Navy had. When you get to the Cairo halfway through, 2 guns just on that one boat. There were well over 20 Union Navy vessels here. So just imagine all that artillery that's here. One of the bigger reasons that the Union wins Vicksburg is because of the use of artillery. When you get to Tour Stop 1, Battery to Galliard, that was the largest Union artillery position on the siege lines. There's over 20 cannon there. Opposing them, the Confederates had a total of 3 cannons, one of whom gets knocked out at that position. General Pemberton has to spread his artillery out to defend against the Union attack, so he can't max his guns like the Union can. So the Union artillery, anytime a Confederate gun fires, up to 10 Union guns, even more than that if they wanted, could respond back and knock it out. So Pemberton, after the first 2 days of the siege, pulls all his artillery off the line to try and conserve it for the last great Union assault that doesn't happen because of the surrender. And when the Confederates surrendered here, the Union has complete control of the Mississippi River now. How many of you raise your hands again from Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana? You're cut off from the rest of the Civil War. You have little to no connection with the rest of the Confederacy. The Union Navy is patrolling in the middle. So you're on your own for the rest of the Civil War. 30,000 man Confederate Army surrendered here. All their small arms become Union arms, including 30,000 brand new British Enfield rifles, many of them that are much better weapons than the Union troops here have. We'll bring it back to cannon again, too. Between 11 and 12% of the entire South artillery surrendered at Vicksburg. That's something they won't be able to overcome, either through production or what they can bring through the blockade from Great Britain. Finally, the morale factor. What had been known as the Gibraltar of the Confederacy is now in Union hands. It really does pave the way for the rest of the Civil War to end the way it did. When you're going around today, keep in mind this is your last water and restrooms for the next 8 miles to get to the Cairo Museum. I mentioned the fire ants earlier. Also be mindful there's 8 poisonous snakes in Mississippi. We have 7 of them in the park. Probably will not see a single snake going through, but just be aware of them. Just watch out for snakes. They won't mess with you if you don't mess with them. They've got the guns secured. Feel free to come in and look around. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.